Hey everyone, and welcome to the FLATLINING Podcast from Fulcrum Strategies. I'm Matthew Handley, and with me is our president and CEO and economist, Ron Howrigan. Ron, how are you doing, sir?
I am good. I hope you are as well.
I'm trying to keep cool. You know, northern Michigan doesn't get very hot, but my office seems to, being in what is essentially an attic. So hopefully there in our office in sunny North Carolina, it's a little bit cooler this afternoon.
Yeah, we've got plenty of AC here, so we're good.
Yeah, see, this is about the 1 week out of the year when you need it where I live in the country. And I've got a portable one in my office, but it's quite loud, so we're going to see about making this podcast today a little bit abbreviated so I can turn it back on. But Ron, we're going to be talking about an important issue even with the heat, and we try and maintain our composure during the program, and that is the impending physician shortage. And this is something that we have talked about on this program repeatedly, and how it affects a number of different specialties. We've talked to our guests about it and what their recommendations are for trying to solve this issue. And I've heard about it on other healthcare platforms as well. Where I haven't heard a lot about it is in the mainstream media. And that changed this weekend with a story on the PBS NewsHour. And they talked about the impending physician shortage for pediatrics. And so, Ron, I want to talk about, one, is it a good thing that this is now getting more attention from, non-healthcare lay people, that they are now becoming a little bit more aware that there is an issue at hand and that there's something needs to be done about it?
It is. I mean, I'd like to say better late than never, but the question is it too late? Because, first of all, identifying this problem, understanding that's great. Fixing this problem is not an easy thing or a quick thing, given how long it takes to train doctors. So, yeah, I'm glad there's, somebody who's looking into this, but we better hurry up or else this is going to be a real problem.
What interests me about this story is it seems to have finally hit some people when the issue affected them. I had a surgery a couple of years ago, and I know that the surgeon I had, he just didn't have appointments out for a couple months, and okay, that's fine. I understand that. This story talked mainly about the pediatric specialty, and so it's issues affecting people's children where they're trying to get, primary care, regular physicals for their children. And what they're finding is in some instances, they've got to book that appointment months, or in case one person had on here, at least a year in advance. And obviously this being more of an issue in rural areas as well. And so, Ron, I will admit that pediatrics is not the first specialty I thought of when it comes to the physician shortage, but I suppose that we can generally say that medical school enrollment is probably on the decline, and obviously that's going to affect all specialties, including primary care and pediatrics.
Well, yeah, there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. It's a theoretical problem until it affects you. And I feel for the people that were in the story. I mean, I feel for them, and they're saying, my kid needs this, and they're going to wait this long. It's a horrible situation to be in. Now, there's part of me, since we've been talking this for a while, that feels like there's that famous scene from the old movie Jaws where Richard Dreyfuss, they're trying to get the mayor to close the beaches, and he's like, I don't think you understand, and the Richard Dreyfuss character says, I think that I'm familiar with the fact that you're going to ignore this particular problem until it swims up and bites you in the ass, and that's a little bit of me think, gosh, people, we're ignoring this problem until it gets personal, and we can't wait that long. So that's one thing. Now, you're absolutely right. This problem is affecting multiple specialties. It's affecting the whole profession. And some of the statistics are scary. Okay, a couple of things just to keep in mind. First of all, there was a recent survey where they surveyed practicing physicians, and they asked them, would you recommend medicine as a profession for your children? 2/3 said no. I mean, that should really scare us. The people who are doing this job would say to their children, don't do this, don't follow in my footsteps. Becoming a doctor used to be one of the most, sought after thing, the thing parents were most proud of. Little Sarah, little Johnny's going to be a doctor. Right, that's changed. There's a projection that by the year 2036, we are going to be short in this country by 86,000 physicians. Now, that is a staggering number in and of itself. The bigger thing, though, is Right now, we graduate, all the physician training programs put together, we graduate just under 30,000 physicians a year. So if we're short by roughly 90,000 physicians at some point, that would mean that it would take us 3 years to catch up if no one retired, died, or stopped practicing medicine, and the population didn't grow. So that's my point about we could get so far behind that you can never catch up. The other thing that really scares me is there was another survey recently that said that 25% of the people who are in medical school or nursing school right now are considering quitting and not even finishing school. The other scary statistic is about 61% of the people who are in medical school right now or in nursing school are saying they are not going to use those degrees for direct patient care. They'll use them for some other thing, working for pharma or looking for business, working for insurance companies. So if we've got this massive shortage affecting everybody, and even if everything stopped, leaving the system, it would take us 3 years to catch up. Well, it's going to take us even longer if 2/3 of the people in training aren't going to use it for direct patient care, and if another quarter of them quit. So that's what I mean by this is a problem that is going to swim up and bite us in the rear end if we're not careful about it. We need to start trying to fix it right now.
Let's talk about solutions. We've talked before, particularly about the reimbursement issue, and I was glad to see that in this report on PBS, reimbursement came up, and it was one of the main things that one of the experts that they talked to pointed out was that you have doctors coming out of medical school with a lot of medical debt, or excuse me, with a lot of student loan debt, because it's very expensive to go to medical school. And a specialty like pediatrics is not a very high-paying specialty. We think about what we deal with, Ron, with most of our clients at Fulcrum is they have a large Medicare population, which is mostly our older fellow Americans, and we've decided we're going to pay for that health care. But what was interesting to me is that for children, it's a different situation. Either children are almost always they're on their parents' insurance through their employer, or they're on CHIP or Medicaid, which is even less than the Medicare population. So when we're talking about a specialty that only focuses on children, it's pretty safe to assume that probably a fair amount of those children are being seen on Medicaid, which is not even covering the cost of the visit.
Yeah, it's adding insult to injury. Medicaid in most states, there's a couple where it's not true, but in most states pays less than Medicare. It oftentimes tracks with Medicare. So when people think about a Medicare cut, like the one that happened this year and the one that's going to happen next year, they think, wow, that's really going to hurt those people that are dealing with our seniors. It's also going to hurt the people who are dealing with our kids, because a lot of Medicaid tracks along with that, and it's even less than Medicare. So it is difficult to think about coming out of training after you've spent so long, depending on subspecialty or fellowship training, 12, 14 years of post-high school education. So you're already starting behind the 8 ball. You're $200,000-$300,000 in debt easy, and you're not going to make a very good income, and that income is probably going to get cut every year. So it's no wonder that almost 2/3 of the folks in training right now are going, I'm not going to practice medicine. I'll never dig myself out of this hole that I've got. I got to do something else that pays better. And then there's the whole thing about the respect and the hassle and all that other stuff they're dealing with that also causes burnout.
What do you think, I mean, other than just raising the Medicaid fee schedule, which would inevitably, if I think about this correctly, in the same way that raising Medicare probably would as well, raise our taxes, and we have to understand that. Short of doing that, what other ways can we make sure that providers in some of these low-paying specialties like pediatrics are able to cover the costs of the visits for the patients that they're seeing?
Well, I think there's a number of things. I talk to a lot of physicians, and the money part of it is one piece, but they didn't become a physician to be the richest they could possibly be. They're smart people. They could have done something else. They had a passion for it. They wanted to help people. So I think we need to look at holistically, what are we doing to physicians and how to reverse that? First of all, we've got to return respect to the profession. And that's everything from getting the insurance companies out of their exam room, telling them how to practice medicine. It's all the paperwork and hassle factor, all the mother may I, all the stuff that really isn't about how do I deliver this patient the absolute best care. Get that out of there. That will help immensely. We've also got us to return respect to them along, and you talk about financial. you can't expect someone who gets many times half of their money from federal funding, Medicare and Medicaid, to feel good about it when every year the message you send them is you're overpaid and deserve a pay cut. Because when you cut the reimbursement, that's what you're saying. Mm-hmm. We think that you made too much money last year and you're going to get a pay cut. That's demoralizing. That's got to stop. Especially when they see that the people who are on Social Security get a cost of living increase every year.
Right. Yep.
Why am I getting cut while they're getting it? And it's not that Social Security shouldn't get it. I'm just saying as a comparison. We've got to respect as a society what they're doing. It's frustrating for many of the physicians to deal with, the pediatricians dealing with the, ill-informed anti-vaxxers who want to argue with them.
Sure, yeah.
The physicians during COVID who had to explain over and over again why you shouldn't take ivermectin, that it's not going to help you, or why some of these other things were a good idea or were not a good idea. We've got to start to respect the profession. It doesn't mean physicians are God. It doesn't mean that we do whatever they say. It's let's start respecting what they're bringing to the table, or, we're going to show up one day and they're not going to be there.
Let me ask you this, because it's something that's crossed my mind before. Physicians are not a monolith. It's probably the most diverse group probably the most diverse profession of any profession in the United States, I would say. I mean, you have physicians all over the map on a wide variety of issues. So they don't vote together. So would an answer perhaps be not necessarily voting at the ballot box, but voting in the way of determining what patients you're going to see? Could a mass exodus of physicians deciding not to see new Medicare patients or Medicaid patients, would that raise the alarm bells enough, perhaps, to try and solve this issue?
Well, it could. Now, I think one of the concerns that physicians have is, first of all, they have a hard time doing that because they know that at the other end of that is a patient who gets harmed. And that's really hard for them. True. Given yes. what their general makeup is. The other is, you could easily see somebody paint them, look at, they're all getting together to hold these seniors hostage. And that's not fun. They could be painted to be the bad guy. I will tell you that, and this is not a pro or con kind of union things. I mean, unions have their purposes and they've got some things that are probably not great. Can you imagine if all 1 million physicians in this country belong to a single physician union? Instead of the AFL or whatever, CIO, the American sure. Federation of Physicians, and they said, you know what, Medicare, you're going to cut us by 2.8%. I think we're going to go on strike in the month of January. I mean, it's one thing when our cars don't get made. It's a whole different thing when we don't get health care. That would definitely bring the point home. Or if they said as a physician union, we're not going to have a contract with Medicare, and these people are going to have to get their care purely through the ER where we have to see them. And I'm not advocating that. I'm saying that this situation will solve itself at some point. It's like, like all bleeding stops and all planes land.
Right.
Eventually. If we don't solve it in a way that maintains this profession, it'll solve itself because there just won't be access. And as a country, we are not used to that and we won't accept it.
Right.
Hey, one last thing.
Sure.
For everybody out there, the next time you're in a medical office or hospital or whatever, and there's a nurse or a doctor there taking care of you and you've listened to this podcast, say thank you for your care. I'm a complete agreement of thanking service members for their sacrifice in their service. And I'd love to see, as the consuming population, if you will, the patients and the family members of patients start to thank those people for the care they provide for us.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Do that. That's a good thing. Well, we'll have this story completely linked in the show notes for this program. You can watch it on YouTube and pbs.org. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment on our website, flatlining.net, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. You can also send us an email, flatlining@substack.com. Ron, as always, thanks for sitting down with me and having some of these hard conversations. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.